injustice on several counts, including the treatment and understanding of women. Philosophers have been some of the most consistent and fruitful contributors to theories of women's inferiority, treating topics traditionally studied by women, such as parenting, caregiving, and other aspects of domestic life, with little interest, while the white male point of view is dramatized in countless thought experiments. Of course, not all philosophy is like this. Feminist philosophy, critical race theory, and queer theory all challenge the dominance of this view. In my experience, the problem is that these schools of thought are neither mainstream nor regularly taught in introductory courses, if they are on offer at all. It is typically as elective courses. In college philosophy departments, the mark of a serious philosopher is whether he knows his epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics, not, for example, his feminist philosophy, which is still largely dismissed as a political rather than a philosophical endeavor. Yet any person who knows their Nietzsche or has carefully studied the history of philosophy recognizes the hubris behind the assumption that some areas of philosophy, including the most abstract, are necessarily free of bias. In this light, perhaps it's no surprise that some women report feeling uncomfortable speaking up in philosophy classes. Perhaps it's also not surprising that there are fewer women in senior positions in philosophy than in any other field in the humanities and in many of the sciences as well. And in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, an important touchstone for scholars and students, women make up only 10% of the most cited philosophers. And all in all, women make up only 13% of authors in top philosophy journals. The plight of women in philosophy is part of a much larger story of the suppression of individuals who are not white, male, heterosexual, cis, and able-bodied. For instance, works by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, BIPOC, make up only 3% of articles published in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and from 2003 to 2021, Black academics contributed only 0.32% of all papers published in the top 15 philosophy journals. These numbers are appallingly even lower than the already tiny fraction of ethnic minorities with PhDs in philosophy. Some scholars pin the lack of diversity on boundary policing, the act of dismissing work as unphilosophical that takes into account feminist, queer, disabled, Black, and other marginalized perspectives. The philosopher Shelley Tremaine says gatekeepers in the field diminish the importance of philosophy of disability, disqualifying it from the realm of what counts as philosophy. Gail Solomon, a queer theorist in the English department at Princeton University, says she left philosophy after growing tired of the constant need to counter the belief that the philosophy that I do is not quite philosophy. I suspect a major reason there aren't many women and minorities in philosophy is because the double standard of justification is simply too exhausting. On top of teaching, researching, and fulfilling departmental duties, these individuals are under constant pressure to prove that they belong there in the first place. These issues of inclusion and fairness were not at the top of my mind when I began studying philosophy, but my perspective started to shift when I accidentally came across the work of a woman philosopher from over 300 years ago. I realized I didn't know any women philosophers who had lived prior to the 20th century. I also realized, abashedly, that I didn't know anything about the women philosophers of the 20th century, except their names. No one in my department studied or taught them. We didn't even have a course on feminist philosophy. I had internalized the misogynist notion that because none of them were being taught, none of them were worth looking into. I was wrong. Over the next few years, I read about the lives and work of 4 brilliant and inspiring female philosophers: Mary Astell, Damaris Masham, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Catharine Cockburn. I discovered that in a time when women were forbidden to study at universities, and male philosophers wrote extensively about the intellectual shortcomings of the female mind, these women pushed back. They highlighted the double standards of philosophers who promoted Enlightenment ideals of freedom and equality, but did not extend those ideals to women. In reading about their works and lives, I started to reconnect to something deep inside myself. Astell, Masham, Wollstonecraft, and Cockburn were heroic voices from across time, cutting through my frustration. This book tells the story of how I lost myself in philosophy, and then, through my discovery of these early feminist philosophers,